Hi, I'm Rishi. I'm a senior consultant at Altius, which is now part of Avanade. I'm a Microsoft MVP, which means I'm a technology evangelist for Microsoft products, in particular data platform and Power BI, which I'm very passionate about.
And hi, my name's Amy. I'm a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft, and I specialise in data science and machine learning.
Great. So today we're going to be showing how Power BI can apply in the finance sector. And this is one of the functions that in an organization that we think could benefit from Power BI the most. So we're really excited to show you how Power BI can apply to the finance area. And we're going to do this through a role play. So I'll play the role of myself as a consultant, a Power BI consultant, and Amy will play the role of a finance manager. So let's get started.
Okay. Hi Rishi, thanks so much for coming in today to discuss our financial reporting process. It's been the same for decades, and I'm pretty sure there's so much more scope for efficiency, but we don't know where to start.
Right, okay, that sounds good. Why don't we start with having a look at your current process? Let's see how that works.
Okay, great stuff. I wrote down a few notes to make sure that I got each of the process, so let's step through
You
them.
sent me some files before as well, right?
I did, yeah. So if you can open
great.
those folders.
So here you go, finance data.
Great stuff. So in these files, so all of these files come into our accounting system, and there's a file with transactions, all of the transactions for that specific month.
Yep,
Perfect.
for each month, yep. So these are all extracts from your accounting system, okay?
Yeah.
Yep, so we've got date, month, organization, yep, scenario. So these are all the keys. And then you've got a reference data file, I guess, with what those keys relate to.
Yeah, so in the reference tables folder, we've got that which has GL accounts, departments, and business units. So that'll then sync up to all those IDs.
Yeah. But then in Excel, I'm assuming you have to bring this all into one big table, right?
Yeah, so each month we copy both of those files into the income statement template file. That sits in the income statements folder.
Yeah.
So we copy it all over to the combined data for pivot sheet.
Right, so we'll have to go into here, say, and we'll just copy all of this in and just paste it into here.
Yeah.
Right, and then the header, and we've got these are all your formulas here, which are then copying in from all of these reference data tabs, right?
Yeah, so we have to then pull down all those VLOOKUP.
Yeah, drag down all those formulas, yeah. This is painful, isn't it? Right. And then, and obviously then we need to put in reference data as well, right? So now we're bringing in against each of our lines, we're bringing in all the GL categories, so where they fit in the financial statements, the country, and the scenario. Okay, great. Yeah. And then here, income statement.
Yeah, so in the income statement, that's where all that data comes in, but it actually has some formulas that make all of this work.
Right.
But these are quite manually updated because we have to link to previous external year files.
That in the prior year, right? Okay, I can see that. Yeah, so we're going into here and linking to the old file. So then you'll have to update the references for these, and also these formulas, I'm assuming as well, right? Because this is going down to row 4317, and I've just pasted in a few new rows. So we need to take it down to 5949, or we could use tables, which would probably make this a bit easier. But I'm guessing you have to do this every month as well, which is
it's super manual.
Yeah, this is quite manual, and then it's basically saying pick out all the data, all the amounts where the scenario is actual, and then times it by the sign for that account in your GL accounts. Okay, so that's what's looking up there. Yeah. Great. Okay. So that's okay. That seems like it's fairly manual. But so how does this work? How long does it take to do this process each month? And are there any issues with it?
Yeah, well, it used to be okay, but recently our company's grown quite a lot, and so obviously with company growth comes data volume growth. And also, actually, I have a quick question for you. I thought Excel 2007 onwards, someone told me that's supposed to be able to handle 1 million rows of data. But we must have like really rubbish machines because it crashes with just over half of that. So on the odd occasion as well, actually, one of the other issues is we also have all those lookup formulas and stuff like that. Like if they go wrong, then it really screws up our numbers. So it happened on an internal report, but we really don't want that to happen on a customer one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, Excel in theory can handle that kind of data, but if you've got, quite a few columns and you've got lots of formulas in there, then, even 100,000 rows is you can grind your machine to a halt quite easily with Excel. So I've been there myself. I'm an accountant. I've been through that pain. But okay, so assuming it does work, assuming you can get all of that, what's next?
Okay, so well, I was saying like it's all quite automated. So our income statement sheet has all those sum ifs, and although we update those references to the right year file, it does, it works. So that's always good. This is messy, so someone needs to go through these formulas and make sure that the right ranges are there. But obviously that can go wrong, and obviously, but we don't really know of a way to do it other than that, because otherwise we have to, like, that's the only way we can split it between files.
Sure. Okay. And then what is this regional views? What does that do?
Yeah. So we need to create different cuts and views for different regions. So we need to send it out so that just those regions can see just those bits of data. And we use that macro button there to kind of split it out, and it goes into the regional view folder. Right,
got you. So that creates all the different views, all the different cuts of the data. So it's the same income statement, but all split out into its own different areas.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that sounds like quite a lot of work, and not much fun for qualified accountants to be spending their time on. There's definitely some better tools out there now, I think, that can help with this process. So let me take a sample of this data and let's see what I can do. Maybe let's meet again virtually, same time, same place next week.
Yeah, that sounds good. I really look forward to it.
Right. We'll see you then. So great to see you again. Thanks, Amy, for making the time. I think you'll be quite pleased with what you managed to do just in a couple of days. So I've used this free desktop application from Microsoft called Power BI Desktop, and created here an income statement view in Power BI. So it's a bit more visual. We still have your income statement here. So we still have the fixed format income statement. So there's lines where we can compare actual to budget and variance, and compare the variance percentage. And we could do it for prior year as well, like you had in the Excel. We've also got a lot more capability here. So, for example, this is showing at the moment for May 2008, which is the kind of for 1 month of the income statement, but we have all of them loaded in here. So we can go back and look at any month in the past, going back all the way to 2006, and it will load in any of those income statements. So all the data is loaded in here. You can deal with much larger data volumes here compared to Excel. And so this has got all your historical data loaded in. We then have different views of it here. So at the moment we're looking at a monthly view, but what we can do is just switch it to look at quarter to date or a year to date view, and all the numbers will update to accordingly. So if we look at these numbers, so we have month to date, quarter to date, year to date. We then have all our key metrics for that month or quarter to date or year to date. So revenue, profit, and some indicators to say whether it's gone up or down. So you can look at this and at a glance really see your performance and see how it compares to prior year. So we can see our revenues up from prior year, up by 37.4 million. Our gross profit's down, our profit before tax is down, and our profit after tax is down. And then we can see the income statement. So say we start with a fixed format, but we've also got a few different views of this income statement. So we could look at measure comparison, which is a bit more kind of like a pivot table style format. And we also then have actuals by country and department. So it's fixed format, but broken down by regions. And here we then have a waterfall chart for you to be able to see for revenue or for profit what the biggest regions were that contributed to that change in that figure over the month or quarter or year.
Wow.
So, yeah. It's quite as I say, this is quite a lot lot in here, and yeah, quite easy to build, a lot more flexible than Excel.
Yeah, so just double checking here. So are there formulas to like other sheets that need to be updated with the data? Is it going to come from like the same thing, or?
No, so it's all just linked into that folder. So each time it will automatically pick up the new data and refresh in the background. So you could, once you publish this report, you can set it to up to automatically refresh. So up to 8 times a day on Pro or 48 times a day on Premium. And what it will do is each time it will refresh, it will go into where your files are. It will pick up all the latest files in that folder and combine them all automatically and do any data shaping and cleansing steps. Once we've set those up, they'll be applied automatically. So actually, let's give that a try. So we can see here we've got data going up to May 2008, and then you sent me a new file on here as well, which was June. So if I just copy this in, and obviously this can be done kind of automatically each time you get data, and it can be monthly, it can be daily, it can be as frequent as you want. Let me just go back to here, and if I paste this in, yeah, and then we can see in Power BI what it's doing is I've got a link to that folder path, so that's where the files are stored, and we can go through and it will refresh all of those. So it picks them all up automatically, and it just applies any of these transformation steps to it. But now what we can do, so each time we'll go in and say this refresh can happen overnight, it can happen automatically, right click on refresh data. And hopefully now what we'll see, once that data is refreshed, is that we've now got June in here as well. So now we've got June 2008 as well. So it's gone and picked up that latest file and brought it in automatically. So same report, we don't need to create a new version of the report. It just updates with the latest data.
Gosh, so you're telling me we can get more frequent reporting, it updates automatically every week, or actually we could do it every day now rather than having to wait till the month end, and there's no manual data shaping required.
No, it's actually very good at taking that granular accounting level data and aggregating it up to perform all of these calculations, so profit and ratios and all of those kind of things. It's like a pivot table formulas, but much more flexible and much more powerful.
That's impressive. The second income statement looks like a pivot table. You can expand that, can you? Expand and collapse the rows?
Absolutely. So we can see here we've got the plus and minus like we do in a pivot table. So we can see revenue, cost of sales, and then we can drill down into that. So we can see actual budget variance and then to prior year and variance, and then drill down into the 153K of revenue and break that down by the various different subcategories, so the different lines in our income statement. So break down into discounts, gross sales, and where they break down even further. Again, we can expand those and see the details underneath these.
Gosh, and I see the whole report is changing. Can you talk to me a bit about that waterfall graph? Tell me what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So by default, this shows for net income, and it shows what it was at the start of the month. So the moment we've got month to date selected, so we can see here at the end of the month it was 25,071, and we can see that's what our net income number was there, 25,071. And if we switched it back to April, we'll see that actually the net profit after tax then was 29,015. So we can, and then it's basically during the month of May, how did we go from 29,015 to 25,071? So that decrease in loss, and we can see which organizational units made up that difference. So we can see that most of it came from European operations and North America, and actually we had an increase in Pacific operations. So that's showing it for that. And actually, if we switch it to a quarter to date view, then what we're going to see is at the start of the quarter, so for the start of that quarter, and then up until, again, to the quarter to date profit, we can then see what's made up the difference in between those. And as I say, it's looking at profit after tax by default, but if we click another line in here, so say we wanted to focus just on revenue, and we wanted to focus on that 280 million, we can then click on revenue, and now this whole waterfall chart will update to show revenue. So now it's showing how we got from April's revenue to May's revenue, and which regional units contributed to that increase in revenue during that month.
I see. No, that was a really, really good explanation. Thank you. One more question for you, something that I think is missing. What about producing those various cuts by region? Do we have to copy and paste or file save as this file?
No, it's much simpler than that. So the way it works is that everyone who goes into this report will look at the same report. There's only one version of this report, so a single version of the truth. But what we do is we set up filter conditions and rules for roles. So we assign people to roles, and then those roles are associated with the data that they can see. So you can have two people looking at exactly the same report in Power BI, but they'll see different data. So they'll see different numbers. If you're responsible for Europe and you can only allow to see Europe data, then when you go into here, you'll see the revenue number just for Europe. Whereas if I can see all regions, I'll see the number for everything. Let me show you how that works. Would that be helpful?
Yes. Yeah. Very helpful. Please do.
So we can see here, we've got one of our tables, we've got organizations. So we've got parent organization here and let's say European operations. And that where this is set up in the data is actually there's a relationship between organizations and our finance data. So what we could do is set up a filter condition on our organizations table, and that will flow through to filter our finance data. So what we can do is we go to modeling and manage roles. And this is where we set up something called row level security. So it's very, very easy to set up. So let's create a role. Let's create, say, a Europe role. And we say in the organizations table, we want to add a filter to parent organization and filter it for European operations. Let's save that. And now we define the permissions or the filter that we need for Europe, and then back when we publish this in the Power BI service, which we can look at later, then we can assign people to that Europe role. So we can assign you to Europe, for example, and then you'll only be able to see Europe data. But once we're in here, what we can do is we can actually see what it would look like if you were part of that Europe role. So if we go to View As and select Europe, we're now viewing the report and that Europe role, and you'll come in, you'll look at this exact same report as me, but you'll just see 55 million for revenue rather than 153 because you're part of that role and you have that restricted data.
That is so interesting. So we don't only build the report, but we can actually govern and control access to that report. Do we need to put in IT requests?
No, so you still want to apply some governance to the data models and logic and stop people from changing things. And you also want to encourage reuse of this. So you have single versions of the truth across your entire organization. But the idea of self-serve BI is that it's very much owned by the business teams themselves rather than centrally managed or by IT with everything to do with security. So, you know who should see what in the data, and you're able to set up those roles yourself.
I see. That is really, really great. I've got one more question for you though.
Sure.
I bet you get this all the time. Can I export this to Excel?
So yes, you can consume this data model in Excel, and again, that's something you could do from the Power BI service. When you're consuming it, you can open it as a pivot table source using something called Analysing in Excel. But can I ask specifically what you want to do with that data in Excel?
Yeah, so having that income statement is great, but I need to do some extra analysis on it, and we can't really automate some of that. So calculating things like key ratios from the data to better understand and show insights on extra graphs. And then I put them into a PowerPoint deck with extra commentary.
Sure. So there are ways we can achieve something similar and a bit more stable and kind of robust, I think, in Power BI. So why don't leave that with me? Well, let me come back and do another version of this or another page of this, and maybe when we meet again, I can show you some alternatives to that perhaps as well.
That sounds great. I'll show this to the team, get them used to it, and then we'd love to see a bit more.
Great. Let's meet again next week. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Rishi.
So, great to see you again. So I took into account what you were after, what you were showing last week, and I've added another page to the Power BI report. And let me know what you think. So I'm just opening that up again now. So this was the income statement page we looked at last time. And I've added a page here called ratio analysis. So what this is showing, so this is what you were talking about, looking at those kind of key ratios, and producing the graphs that you can put into PowerPoint decks. So this looks at a given ratio. So I've put 5 ratios in here, and cost income ratio, or effective tax rate, or gross margin, and then we can see how that ratio has changed from last year, and then also a comparison as to what's driving that change. So, and this is what you really need to present back to leadership team, I'm assuming, the numbers, but also the story behind them, and what's driving those numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we look at cost income ratio, and again, we're looking at May here and month to date. So we can see the cost income ratio for May overall was 54%, and it's gone up from 34% last year, which is not good. It means our costs as a proportion of our income are significantly higher. So that's why this is in red, and we can see this increase. And then here in this bullet chart, we can see what's driving that increase. So we can see actually broken down, that same cost income ratio broken down by region. So we've taken the total cost for European operations and the total income and worked out the cost income ratio. And this blue bar here shows the current value, and then the black horizontal line shows the prior year value. So we can see European operations has a significantly higher cost income ratio this month compared to the same month last year. And it's actually a bit higher in USA and North America, and not applicable for Pacific operations. So, and then we can see a breakdown by specific countries or specific regions. So we can see those individually plotted on a scatter plot. And this is really to provide context, because we can see the cost income ratio plotted against revenue. And the idea behind that is to say, well, you might have some regions or some countries which have a very high cost income ratio, but actually if their revenue is very small, then they're not the ones that are driving that to be high overall. Because if it's, if they're small units with low revenue, then even if it's a high percentage, doesn't contribute much to the overall number. So here's where we can really start to see that context and look for those units that have a high cost income ratio and also have a high revenue. So really sit in that top right quadrant. And those are the ones I think we need to worry about more than the ones who have low revenue. Underneath that, we can see for overall, we can see the cost income ratio compared to prior year over time. So the blue line is current year and the grey dotted line is prior year. And here we have just a smaller version of our income statement. So again, the idea behind this is we could start to drill into specific details, specific regions, and understand what's driving it, looking at the numbers as well.
Nice. This is quite useful, especially if we don't have to perform those ratio calculations ourselves all the time. Quick question, is it interactive?
Yes, of course, and that's where the real power of something like Power BI comes in. So let's take, for example, European operations. We could see that that's one of our problem areas, because in May, at least, our cost income ratio was much higher compared to last year. So we can click on European operations, and now everything that we're showing on this page is now filtered for European operations. So we're honing in on this particular continent. And we can see here that then within European operations, now we've got France and Germany. So these are the two countries that make up those operations. And we can see the cost income ratio and the revenue for both. So we can see that France has a slightly higher cost income ratio, but also slightly lower revenue. And then we can see for European operations, the line chart. And actually, we can then focus a bit more detail. So we can cross-highlight by do multi-selection by pressing Control. So if we click on France, then we can see actually for May, there was a massive difference for France between last year and this year. So this year we're on 51%, and last year we were on 11%. So specifically for May, France is really driving that number for European operations. And then now we're also filtered specifically for France. We can now look at these numbers, which again filtered now just specifically for France, because that's what I've selected. And we could look at actually what those costs are. So why were our costs so high? We can look into, say, operating expenses. And I remember when I was looking at this before, I saw something quite big in here, labour expenses. So we can see actually our labour expenses were much higher this month compared to last year.
Yeah, no, that actually makes a lot of sense. We had some staffing issues in the Paris office, and had to hire quite a lot of emergency temp staff, which was like super expensive. So yeah, that's brilliant that you were actually even able to go and find that information with pretty much zero context. So we'll find it super quickly.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that's exactly that's really what Power BI is designed for you to start with those visuals, those high level details, and get the idea of what the story's telling you overall, and then drill into the detail of what's driving it. So start to do the cross filtering and the drill down capability to know what's driving those numbers.
Nice. And quick question. So love this. Like, this is exactly what we want. Can I export these graphs to PowerPoint and add my commentary on, like I was talking about before?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so it is possible to export to PowerPoint. And again, that's one of the features on the Power BI service. But the challenge with doing that is then you're creating offline static versions of those visuals, which aren't updated. So if you went in and updated, put some adjustments in or updated the numbers somewhat, then those wouldn't get updated and there's offline copies and you'd have to do that again. And also creates a potential security risk, right? So we're putting in row-level security in here, and we're securing who can access this data. But then if we just download it into PowerPoint, we don't have that same control over the files anymore. So what's better is actually to try and use some of that functionality within Power BI. So one of the things we could look at is using bookmarks. So we can see here I've created a few hidden pages that actually have some of the graphs, and these are still the same kind of interactive graphs. So I've just copied them into a separate tab, but we've still got all of that kind of interactivity and cross-filtering capability in them. And I've also added some text boxes and some commentary around it. So these are like the PowerPoint slides that you might put together. And we can have a look at the bookmarks here. And then what we do is we record these snapshots, and we can navigate through the snapshots. So either using buttons or using the bookmark navigator. So we can see here, this is the story that we're telling through these bookmarks. So we start off looking at the cost income ratio, saying it was higher compared to last year. And European operations was the worst because it had 72% compared to 41% last year. So we've added that commentary in. We're then going to tell a bit more detail as to that story. So we're saying with Europe, it was much higher in France compared to Germany. And then we're saying in France, it doesn't explain the May variance, but actually France does, because France had a big difference compared to in May. And then that story we went through just now, where we were looking at that, we could say actually we could see that it was because labour expenses were almost double compared to the same period last year. And then I wasn't sure why that was. You told me now that actually it was due to staff shortages. So actually we can go in here and edit that in here. So let's take out it's not clear why and put in this was due to staff in the Paris office. So, and now we have these kind of slides, if you like, that we could use in a presentation and cycle through it, but they're all part of the same report. And you still have all of that interactivity. If you wanted to switch the view of this particular page to look at a year-to-date view, then everything will update just by clicking that. So much more interactive than PowerPoint.
Wow, you're doing me out of a job now. I don't know what I'll be doing for the rest of the month.
Not at all. What it enables you to do is to make better data-driven decisions and to be able to spend more time analysing the data and presenting it rather than the number crunching and getting to those different cuts of data.
Nice. I'll take that. No problem. So those snapshots that you just created, can I distribute them or send them to people so that they can respond with their comments as well?
Yep, absolutely. And that actually might be a good segue into kind of looking at what we could do in the Power BI service. So at the moment we're working with Power BI Desktop, and this is where we're building and authoring our reports. And then once we publish into service, that's where we can start to share and collaborate on them with other people. So why do we look at that in our next session? Again, should we set up next week again?
Yeah, that sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Great. Hi, Amy. Good to see you again. So,
see you, Rishi. Actually, I just wanted to let you know, I've been reading through Power BI a bit more, and our team is so looking forward to this session. They're really excited to get on board.
Well, really good to hear you've been reading about Power BI and the service. And I mean, there's so much out there, and it moves at such a pace. So the desktop application is updated every month, and it has been for the last 4 or 5 years, with 10, 20 features a month. So the team are working in a really agile fashion. They're listening to what customers want. You can go onto ideas.powerbi.com and put your suggestions for what you want in the product, and the team evaluate those on a daily basis and use that to prioritize their backlog. So really, really fascinating. Right, so let's have a look at Power BI. So as I said, we looked at Power BI Desktop in our last session. Mm-hmm. So now let's look at powerbi.com. So we go into powerbi.com and we click on sign in. And I think I'm already signed in here to a tenant. Otherwise, we'll just put in our work credentials. So it's all linked into Active Directory, which is what you use to log into Windows, for example. And that synchronizes or federates with the online version of Active Directory, Azure AD. And that's what sits behind Power BI. So we have our whole organization already within Power BI. We don't need to go in and manually add users or anything like that. It's all tied into your organization, and that's one of the real benefits of having this as a kind of Microsoft product, if you like, in the stack. So click sign in, and we've signed into the Power BI service. And once we're presented on here, we can see some of the content that we have. And we have this idea of workspaces. So this is where our content is kind of hosted. And this is where we can then collaborate with that content with other people. So we can create a workspace. And this is one I created earlier. So when you create a workspace, we just give it a name. And you can upload an image if you like. And I've created one here called Power Platform Finance. And then once we're in here in Power BI service, we just have to log into Power BI and click on Publish in here. And it's going to ask us which workspace we want to publish it to. So Power Platform Finance, I've done that already. So here we can see it. And then we could see that report there in Power BI service. So in the Power Platform Finance workspace, we can see this report here in the report section.
Ah, okay. No, that seems simple enough to kind of share this kind of stuff and access it through a web browser. Can you talk to me a bit about these terms here? Is a dashboard, do you just call everything a report? Is that just like a new tech terminology, like an app?
Right. No, yeah, I mean, there's always a bit of confusion around that because people just think of dashboards as being everything. But actually, what we produced in Power BI Desktop was actually a report, not a dashboard. So that's where we see the report here. So if we click on the reports, we can see the report that we publish and all those visuals exactly like we saw it in Power BI Desktop. We can see those here. We also have data sets, and data sets are the data model that sits behind that report. So when we load in all of the data, it gets loaded into an in-memory database that sits behind Power BI, and that's where we can then manage those, or we can manage those separately to the reports. So that's data sets, that's reports. Workbooks is Excel workbooks. Data flows is a way for you to connect to data outside of Power BI Desktop, so you can do this more centrally on the Power BI cloud rather than in your desktop, and then multiple Power BI reports can connect to these. And dashboards is actually individual tiles or components from different reports. So the idea behind this is you might have one report and with the same data that comes from finance. You might have another report that comes from HR, and in a dashboard, what you want to really be able to see is your data across your entire business. So you want to see some data from finance, some data from HR, and even though they're coming from different sources and they're coming from different reports, you could bring them all together in a dashboard. So if we go into the reports here, if we go into a report and we can say we want to see this on our dashboard, we can just pin this visual, and I pin it to a new dashboard or an existing one. I've got one there, and then we go to dashboard, and then we can see it here. So this dashboard is a kind of live view. So when we update, our report gets updated, our tiles in our dashboard also get updated.
Nice. Oh, thanks so much for clarifying that. That makes a lot more sense. That was something that was an area of confusion. So which of these different, is it reports or is it dashboards, do I share with other people? And does everyone see this Power Platform Finance workspace?
So not everyone will see it. It's up to you what you want to share. So broadly speaking, there are three main things you can do in the Power BI service. So you can share you can collaborate, and you can distribute. Sharing is kind of ad hoc sharing. So what we can do with this is we can ad hoc share a report or a dashboard. So if we go to reports here, and then we can click on the share icon here, and it says here we can type in email addresses. So if I could say I want to share this with you, and I've added you into my organization, so we can see you here, and we can give options for whether I want you to be able to share that report onwards or not, whether I want you to be able to access the data behind it to build your own reports off that data set, and whether to send you an email notification. And there's a link to the actual report. So this is your kind of ad hoc sharing. And I could go in and see who this has been shared with, and see, I can manage those permissions or even remove some of those links to permissions. So quite good with the capability there. So that's sharing. Distribution, and then once you share something, by the way, it will come up in here and shared with me. Collaboration is all about workspaces. So this is where you have a team of developers or a team of content creators, and you want them to be able to access this environment where they can publish to. So we published our report to this workspace, and then other people can publish their report to this workspace, and they can also go in and do all of the things that I'm doing here as a member of this workspace or an admin of this workspace. So to do that, in the workspace, we can go to workspace access, and here we can type in people or entire teams, so entire Active Directory security groups, and we can assign them a role, whether we want them to be an admin of that workspace and they can do everything, or a member, or a viewer. So these are all kind of different levels of roles we can assign them. So this is for collaborating over content. And then the most common is going to be distribution. So this is where you've produced something in a workspace, or a couple of reports and a dashboard maybe, and then you want to roll that out to a wide audience. So to people who, and you only need them to have a read-only view. So what we do is we have the concept of app, and each workspace can get published into an app. So for each element in here, we can choose whether we want to include it or not. Then we click on update app or publish app if it's the first time. We say, give it a name, we could give it a little logo. We could define what we want the navigation to look like, and then we define who it goes to. So we could say, again, we could put in entire teams here. So we could say, I want to send it to everyone in the finance department. So I've got a group set up here called finance team, and then it sends it all to the finance team. So everyone then can go into apps when they go into it, and they'll see this Power Platform Finance app. And this is the nice way of viewing the content in Power BI, and the default way of distributing content. So they can see the dashboard because we included that in the app. They can also see the report, and it looks quite nice. So we can also include links to everything else. So I included a link here to a Getting Started Power BI tutorial. So rather than assuming that everyone knows how to use Power BI, we've got a little tutorial here that shows how you do things like drill down and takes you through that example. So it's just a standard kind of report to include in the apps to help people navigate through the Power BI reports.
Gosh, yeah, that is far better than what we can do in PowerPoint currently as our team. So yeah, no, this is really, really good. The only thing I noticed was you obviously shared that with the whole finance team, and that's great because we want to share it with them. But what about that scenario where I only want certain parts of the finance team, depending on their region, to see different data cuts?
Yeah, so we don't need to do different apps for that. So again, it's just one app. Again, the idea is not to duplicate content. So we just have one report, one app. What we do then is, do you remember we set up those roles in Power BI Desktop?
Yeah.
So if we go back into this workspace now and we go to datasets, because datasets is really where those roles live. If you remember, we set the filter condition on that table. So under datasets, we can go into the ellipses here and go to security. Now we can see the roles that we created in Power BI Desktop. So we can see the Europe role, for example, and we can add people to that role. So if I add you to that role, then when you go into that app, you'll just see Europe data, or you'll see whatever conditions are filtered for you in Europe. If I add someone else into a group that's got North America, when they go in, they'll see just a North America data. So you're all going into the same app, you're all looking at the exact same report, but you'll see data depending on which role you've been assigned in the security tab.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a super neat way of sharing those different permissions. I also like the idea that everyone's going to that app, they're accessing everything they need, but they only see the data that they need, and they're also just accessing it from a web browser by the looks of it. So that's, again, that's really, really great. Now, the only thing I'm kind of thinking about here, I don't want to be cynical, but we're all busy in our day jobs. Is this going to be yet another thing for me and my team to remember to go find and go do?
Exactly. I mean, you have your tools that you open up, and you open up Outlook, and I'm the same. I'm completely ruled by my mailbox, so I'm not going to remember to open up my web browser, go into powerbi.com and look through the reports. So one of the things I find quite useful to do with this actually is to set up a subscription feature. So if we go into the app, and we go into here, we can see that we've got this icon here called subscribe. So we can click on subscribe here. I need to subscribe on the report because I haven't actually pinned any visuals to that one yet. So here I can subscribe to this report.
Yep.
And what I could do is then say, right, I want to have this every time this data gets refreshed. So say this is once a day overnight. I can specify what time. I can say how many times a day. It will send me an email with a snapshot image of this report and say, have a look at this report in Power BI. And then it will have a link in that email to go straight to the Power BI report. So it kind of keeps it into my mailbox. It's like having it received in my mailbox, but rather than having a big PDF in there, I've just got a snapshot of the image that I can go and see the live data in Power BI. So here I can just set the subject, a message, which report page do we want to take the snapshot of, how frequently do we want to do it. We can do it after every data refresh once a day, or we can do it hourly, daily, at set times, weekly or monthly, and then set those in there, and it will come into your email box. And you can also, if it hasn't got relevant security, you can subscribe other people to it as well.
Oh gosh, that is so handy to remind people. Actually, another one for sort of quick access and easy sort of remembering. When they log into Power BI via the website, is there a way to get up the reports we use all the time? Like in Excel, I can see the last few and I just open them straight away.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to go and search for it. It's all just there in your recently opened files, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So we've got the same kind of thing in Power BI. So we've got their recent tab, and this will show you all the stuff that you accessed recently. And you've also got favorites. So you can, again, like in Excel, you can pin stuff to your menu bar, to your open files. You can mark things as favorites, and then we can go in there and see your favorites. So all the things that you access regularly. And this is really handy if you've got hundreds of apps and people have distributed to the whole organization and said everyone can see this, and suddenly your Power BI usage has grown. Then things like favorites and recents are really handy.
Yeah. Oh no, that's really, really good. Thank you for sharing that with me. That'll be one of those easy tick off ones with the team. They'll appreciate that. There's a couple of technical people on our team, and they will help put these reports together. But they often ask questions. We get questions from lots of different business teams, and we have to kind of share our insight into the context of those numbers.
Sure.
With Excel, we just add comments to specific cells. As like reference specific data points. Maybe there's something wrong with the data and we have to kind of say. In Power BI, do I just take a screenshot and then email it to people? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no real need to use emails with it. So one of the features in Power BI is the ability to add comments to a report or to a specific visual. So if I go back into the app, and say I'm looking at this revenue number and I'm thinking, okay, this has gone up, but it actually looks a lot lower than I was expecting. So I need to kind of query that, and this is useful to do before we start presenting it back. Let me ask a question about it. So what I can do is I can click on comments here, and I can ask a question, and I can point it to particular people. So I can say, Amy, why is revenue so low? And this is against the revenue and against month to date. And then you'll get an alert with this notification, and you'll get a link back to this particular report. And the link you'll get back will actually be very context specific. So if I've applied specific filters, or I'm looking at May month-to-date view, you'll see that exact view. So I don't need to go into the email and say I was looking at May month-to-date. I can actually just send you this, and it will automatically take that context in the snapshot. And if I post that, you'll get that email notification. But also, actually, there's one thing I forgot to mention earlier. Actually, is Power BI is also available on the mobile, so you can view reports and dashboards on the go. So as soon as you publish them to Power BI service, you can download the app on iOS or Android or Windows Phone, and you can see it there. And you can also add comments. You can annotate your reports on there and then send it to other people. So it works on mobile as well.
Oh gosh, no, my team will really like that. We get a lot of sort of like ad hoc on-demand questions where people want like immediate results. So if someone's just left work, like they can just quickly go and check in the Power BI app, can they?
Yeah, absolutely, and they can respond there as well.
Oh, that's amazing. Like our team will really appreciate that. We get quite on-demand sort of ad hoc questions, that people need quick responses to. So actually, if someone's like just left work and they're on the train, like they can just go to the app and check it out, I guess.
Yep, sure. And they can respond to that mobile app too as well.
Oh, amazing. Okay. And so once we've got all those comments and we need to collate that story together to sort of tell the data of the story, you talked about those presentation features. Were they called bookmarks, was it? Are they available in the web browser?
Yep, absolutely. So we created some bookmarks in Power BI Desktop, and we can access those here by clicking this little bookmark icon here in the app. So if we click on bookmarks, we can see personal bookmarks. So actually, we can say, if you this is for your own view. So each time I log in, I can set up my own bookmarks that's specific to what I look at in the data. So if I always go into a report and set a specific set of filters for the visuals, I can go in and set those filters and then capture that as a bookmark. And then every time I come back, I can see my own view. I don't have to go in and apply those filters again. I can also just see when I see more bookmarks, I can see the ones that the report author put into place when the report was being built. So these are the ones that we built in Power BI Desktop, those hidden pages. So they're not pages in the report, but they're here just as bookmarks. So we can go in and navigate through those. So this is those kind of story slides that we were navigating to. We can also put buttons and things on the page to be able to navigate to specific bookmarks. So you can kind of tell a story just by clicking through a series of buttons. But those are all there. Okay. It's like the PowerPoint slides, but with interactivity as well.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's going to really help me in those leadership meetings when we try to prepare all the answers that they might ask. But obviously, there's some things that just come up in the meeting that we need to go back and do analysis for, and then set up another meeting. Is there a way where we can connect it to Excel and quickly do some of those, ad hoc questions?
Yeah, so if you get asked a question in a meeting and you need to go in and look at the data, and it's not something you prepared before as a visual, right? So I suppose that's the challenge.
Yeah.
So, yes, it is possible to bring this data into Excel, either for kind of ad hoc queries and when you're in a meeting, or for if you want to delve into that detail, you can click on these three dots here and do Analyze in Excel. And what that will do is open up in Excel this Power BI data set as a pivot table source. So once we open in here, now we can see we have a pivot table, and this is all of our data models. So it has all of our calculations in there, and it has all of the tables that we saw in Power BI. And now, rather than, like in Excel, do you remember we had to bring everything into one big table? We don't need to do that here because we've got them all as separate tables. We've got our accounts, our finance data, all as separate tables. We've got our calculations in here already, so we don't need to define them again. And we can just drag them in. And, if we just drag in, say, header, we can create our pivot tables in Excel. So if we do subheader, header, and amount, we need to do it as a measure on there somewhere. But we could drag these in, or percentage variance to budget. So we can even just do percentage calculations and then see how for each of those vary to budget. So, but and whilst that's really useful, and there's definitely a use case for it, I think for your scenario that you're talking about specifically around being able to answer some ad hoc questions, there might be some better ways of doing it. When you were reading about Power BI Service, did you come across the Q&A feature at all?
I did, but it looked a bit like wizardry, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on and how I would use it. Could you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what this actually allows you to do is it is actually wizardry. So it's if we go into a report, and we can do this on a dashboard level, so look across all of the visuals and all of the reports on the dashboard, or we can build it into our individual reports where it will look just within that report. So what I added in here was a little button, and we can do this as a visual as well, where we can just type it directly into the visual, but here I've added a little button, and if we click on here, it will take us to the Q&A window, where we can ask a question about the data. So we ask a question in normal English language, and Power BI will be able to interpret that data, to interpret that question, understand what it means, and draw you a visual that will answer that question for you. So it does that all automatically. So I say very kind of intelligent system. So say you got asked a question, actually gives you some questions to get started with, because it's kind of looking at your main fields in your data set and then kind of coming up with some questions that you might want to ask, like what is the profit before tax by header, and then you can see what that is, and it will do that. But you can also say you got asked a specific question about say budget, total budget May 2008, and as you start typing, it will pick up fields in your values. So here you go, budget to May 2008. It tells you what your budget number was for May 2008. Or we could say, I want to see my OPEX actuals by department. If I can spell department. And then it draws you a graph of your, it understands what you mean. It understands the term OPEX actual, it understands the term department, because that's what fields are called in your data model, and it will produce a visual for you automatically. And you can also even train this to pick up specific terms that you use in your own business, and you can train the model to identify what those are. So if you call department something else, you can say a synonym for department is function or something, and it will pick that up as well and recognize that.
Oh my goodness, this is what I was saying, wizardry, cool, right?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how it works, but that is exactly what my team needs in those meetings. So that will help so much.
Great.
So just a huge thanks for all your time, Rishi, working through our situation specifically. It feels like we've explored so much of Power BI, but there's still so much more to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I do think Power BI is a great fit for your business at this time, and we can start to look at next steps about how we can start to build this, to integrate it, and also train up your team to use Power BI. And there's so much to Power BI, there's so many different elements, so you could really tailor it to fit your specific reporting and BI needs.
Oh, right, okay. I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but how do I get accountants in my team sort of trained on all of this that you've shown us? Do I need to send them on a course?
Yeah, I mean, courses are always great. It's always a good option to get people out of the office and get that face-to-face kind of instructor-led training. But there's also so much material out there in Power BI that people could consume for free mostly and at their own pace. So I mean, as a way to get started, actually Power BI itself is a good place. Mm-hmm. So in Power BI Desktop, we open this back up again. There's a tab here called Help, and on here we can go to Documentation. We could look at specific videos, guided learning or training videos. And if we click on guided learning, it actually takes you to all of the different areas. So all of these things we were talking about today, about how do you interact with Power BI reports? How do you ask questions of your data? How do you create slicers and visualizations or map visuals? All of these things have, short videos and short articles on how to do it. So lots of stuff, and this is coming straight from the Microsoft Power BI team. So the people who actually build the product are writing these how-to articles. So it's really straight from the horse's mouth. But there's also a massive community. As I said, I'm an MVP. I'm a member of this community, and I put out a lot of content myself, a lot of free training content for people to learn Power BI. So a lot of the stuff we covered today is I put out there as material.
Wow, no, I mean, that's a lot already. We will absolutely go through all of these resources that you'll send us. Have you got any materials specifically for finance people? I guess we're kind of...
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, being an accountant and being a Power BI enthusiast, it's something that I've done a fair bit myself. So actually what I've done is, that income statement we were looking at before,
Yeah.
I've written up a series of blog posts on how to build that out step by step, and it goes from quite basic into quite detailed and quite advanced concepts about how you build those charts and set up your data tables and those dynamic measures. And you can access those blog posts by going to aka.ms and then PBI income statement. aka.ms. And that will take you to the community blog. And here you can see I've got all of those 5 steps on how you build all of that. And so that'll be really useful. I've also set up a community, a new community for Power Platform Finance. So this covers not just Power BI, but also all the other aspects of the Power Platform. So Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agent. So that can be accessed by looking at powerplatformfinance.com. And here you'll see material and also events that we've got upcoming. So we've got some events coming up in the next week, some webinars, and we've also been running, last year we ran a few physical events in London, face-to-face events at the Microsoft Reactor. This year I think we're going to go a bit more virtual, but also plan to hold some events in London perhaps later in the year when this whole lockdown situation resides.
That is amazing. I'll definitely check them out and sign up for some of those webinars and events. And yeah, just thanks again for all your time. We're really excited to get started.
Great. Thanks. It's great to meet you again, and be in touch, and we'll speak again soon.
So hopefully that scenario was able to highlight the current practices, and also your wish list can be achieved by Power BI. From creating to analysing to sharing and distributing, Power BI is ready to support finance teams. Thank you so much for your time. Check out all those learning resources that we spoke about at powerbi.com or powerplatformfinance.com.